Did John Harbaugh hint at a potential Baltimore Ravens trade? We talk about that, the latest on the Marcus Williams situation and drama is currently unfolding, all that and more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today. It's Taco Tuesday, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every day, free and available for you all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube, you can hit that like and subscribe button. In audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage through and through on this show. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Here with me, it is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail back in the building. And Q, all good things must come to an end. And for the Baltimore Ravens, that meant their 5-game winning streak. It officially gets snapped against the Cleveland Browns. They got a 29-24 defeat at the hands of an AFC North rival. And look, there are a bunch of things we're going to get into in terms of how they lost this game, why they lost this game. But Q, just mistakes, missed opportunities, and sloppiness are just some of the things that the Ravens experienced on Sunday.
Why do we keep saying the same phrase for decades? Any given Sunday. Any team on any given Sunday can beat another NFL team regardless of record. It's hard to win in the National Football League. More games are lost than they are won. All those cliches came true on Sunday. When you go up against a division opponent, they know you, you know them. It's going to be a close one. Everything that we talked about came to fruition, and part of it is the fact that, Cleveland was sitting there desperate for a win, but in that desperation, they got talented players on that squad. And I think for the Ravens, when you do win, sometimes those errors and those mistakes that you would address when you lose, it doesn't really get addressed when you win. It gets a little glossed over. And I remember the GOAT of GOATs when it comes to college coaches talked about it when his teams would play up against a lesser opponent and they just came off of some top tier win. Well, the top tier win was a barely, won game, but they won it. They won it, but they didn't necessarily address their mistakes. And so the lesser team that they had to face, they didn't really put all their attention to it. And then it wound up blowing up in their face and they lost the game. So Nick Saban kind of gave me some understanding as I was looking back on all the different times throughout different seasons where the Ravens had it and they lost it because they didn't necessarily address their weaknesses the way they needed to. And it takes a division opponent, like in this particular case, the Cleveland Browns, who are desperate to put themselves up on the map. They go out there and they give a clunker of all clunkers. And that's something that if they learn from, great. If they don't learn from, mother of pearl. We just saw that winning streak be the best of what it was for the Ravens this year.
Yeah, and your point is great because literally, if you want to take that example from this season, Dallas in week 3 is a game where they had all sorts of issues closing out that game, but they won. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like we almost blew the game. We had all these issues closing it out, but they won the game. So it's like, okay. And then Cincinnati in week 5, where, that secondary wasn't necessarily doing what it needed to be doing, but okay, they came back and they won. And you're like, all right, well, we got issues to fix, but okay, we won the game. But now you go to this game and it's like, well, whoa, these mistakes now cost us that game. And you can't be having those mistakes cost the games, especially for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And we'll certainly get into kind of what the vibe is, not only around the city, but just around the team right now from a national perspective. But Q, obviously, some of the big things that people are talking about is not only the coaching, but the personnel, particularly on the defensive side of the ball and somewhat on the offensive side of the ball too. This Ravens roster has talent up and down, right? To me, I think that this roster is very talented, but we know that Eric DeCosta is always looking for ways to improve it. And now with this kind of sour taste in the organization's mouth, really just the way that they blew this game, John Harbaugh during his Monday press conference was asked, well, the trade deadline coming up, with the personnel, is that something that, you and Eric DeCosta are looking at? Harbaugh was asked, with the trade deadline approaching, whether it's an edge rusher or another position, the personnel. And John Harbaugh said, I think that we definitely will, because Eric does. Eric and his guys do that, and then he went on this whole thing about how he loves his guys and, he has all the confidence in the world. And yes, John Harbaugh, we know he loves his guys. And I know this is your favorite season, right? Hashtag trade season. We got it going on just for you. But do you think that, Harbaugh's kind of hinting at, hey, we're looking at everything right now, because obviously this is not the first time the defense has looked bad. The secondary has looked bad. And I think, look, it's exactly that. Eric DeCosta is always looking for a way to improve this team. And there are certainly options out there if the Ravens do want to dip their foot into that trade pool where they could bring somebody in. And we've seen them do it in the past also.
Yes, they brought in guys before offensively, the Le'Veon Bells, the Devonta Freemans of the world. I understand that there needs to be something done. And make no mistake about it, I know they've had guys coming in and out of the building to do their workouts and to see where they're at and check on them. I mean, that's just across the league. And those maybe are guys where they maybe had an injury or, just for whatever reason was borderline on making whatever roster, but now you need that added extra something. I think in this particular case, you need to really look hard at, man, if this is the year, we really need to make a strong move to keep the momentum going. And to have like a Jabo or Adisa Isaac as healthy scratches, to have, the issues that you're having when it comes to the secondary. And I think, safety is just the big boy glaring one.
Yeah.
Mother of pearl. I mean, yeah, I think, Eric DeCosta has to really look at it and figure out if for his sake, John's sake, because ultimately you got to answer. I mean, the fan base is one thing, but Steve Bisciotti pays your checks, and you got yourself a legit bona fide team. There needs to be some level of like, this is our year. What are we going to do to make this year a year that's going to work for us?
Yeah, and I'm with you where I'm, John Harbaugh in this answer, he's saying, okay, yeah, I think we'll definitely look at that. But he's not saying, yes, we're going to make a trade or no, we're not going to make a trade. He's just saying, yeah, well, there are certain things that, that they have to identify, because we know that things can come together or fall apart in that trade world in an instant. We saw it literally last season with Derrick Henry, where everybody thought that, okay, this is a done deal. And then the Titans say, oh, hold on, not so fast. So the Ravens, they have needs. They have glaring holes. And I think you're right, Q. It's a little different from this year as compared to years past. Now, again, the Ravens don't have to operate from a level of desperation, but I do think they have to operate with a sense of, I'd say, urgency, I guess, to the point where it's like, okay, don't throw like a second round pick at a third string edge rusher just to do it, right? Obviously, the deal has to make sense for you and for the opposing team, but we've now seen Kansas City go out there and get both DeAndre Hopkins and Josh Uche. And it's not necessarily, Josh Uche had a great year in 2022, hasn't really done a ton since then, but it's about the precedent of Kansas City spending their draft capital. Baltimore's upcoming queue, they're scheduled for 11 draft picks coming in this offseason. So I think it can be a little more expendable with guys, especially when okay, the pass rush, like you mentioned, David Ajabo, he's a healthy scratch, right? He's not showing you anything. Adisa Isaac, he's also a guy that, okay, what's he showing you? You need guys that can help you win if this is the year, like you said. So, for example, guys like Jadeveon Clowney, guys like Qadry Smith, maybe a guy like Calais Campbell on the interior. Hey, all former Ravens, man. We're just having to bring everybody home, I guess, is what we're trying to say there in the
Give me
secondary.
David Clowney just because you realize, hey, he's just sitting there wasting away in Carolina.
Yeah,
like
it could be.
I look at Zadarius and I'm like, man, he must be like, yeah, some of y'all, I'm just going to let y'all know what it looks like. And then all of a sudden, he just has the game that he had. I was like, goodness, why Zadarius? Why? Why couldn't you have been a little bit more gentle? But it would be, in all seriousness, good to have that kind of like, where you stuffing the run, setting that edge, and then at the same time, getting up and getting in the face of a quarterback, especially an elusive one like, obviously Lamar Jackson. But there's nobody that's going to be nowhere near the level of Lamar Jackson. So could you imagine him being on your team and just wrecking havoc? Or even, heck, like I said, Jadeveon Clowney wrecking havoc. I think it's one thing when you get good pass rush in that first quarter, maybe even second quarter. But if you're not at the end of the fourth and third quarters where momentum is everything, if you don't just turn the tide with some amazing play, you're fooling yourself. You're shortchanging the whole thing with your team. I mean, yeah, yes, the offense played terrible, but they still put themselves in position to win the ball game when they left the field. The defense needs to close it out and say it should have been one of those quote games where, Kyle Hamilton goes up to the mic. Yeah, hey, the offense been carrying us. We know we needed to close out the game. Roquan, hey, I know, I've been playing and there's been some, some struggles, but man, when it mattered the most, we came up big. You need Brandon Stevens, to go up and be like, hey, we know that, our secondary is a good secondary and we're working through some things, but, I think, it showed that, Cleveland, but the 300 plus yards and my God, man, big play after big play that was just thrown at you. And Jameis Winston is not some, couch potato, but yeah, trade is kind of staring right at you. And again, if you got 11 picks, that's all well and good, but them 11 picks ain't going to be around if you sitting there answering to Steve Bisciotti. I think it's one of those cases where, and I'm not, speculating and saying, they're on the hot seat. I'm just saying that this team is built to win now. And if you can get somebody who's a veteran player, because young players got to develop. So the TJ Tampas of the world, they're off developing now and being on IR. Okay, so next year, so you're pushing people back, but you need somebody now. And that's where I think we saw with Kansas City with a now type player. Who's the now type player is my mindset. Who's the now type player?
Yeah, and for the Ravens, and I was going to say too, like in the secondary, like you mentioned, corner-wise, with Marlon, Nate, Brandon, all these guys, right? I know a lot of people are calling, are they going to trade for a corner? If they were to make a secondary move, I'd probably say safety would be the one that you go after. Obviously Eddie Jackson, right? Not a great game, and he had honestly pretty down season for him this year. Marcus, obviously, we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. So if anything, is a Javon Holland available? Is that a guy for them? Buda Baker, would Arizona move off of him, even though they're doing better than I thought? So you got to look there. And I think everybody, Q, is off the wide receiver train now, even though we saw some drops in this Cleveland game. Everybody's saying, all right, well, you know what? I think defense is probably more important than wide receiver right now, especially because while Rashad had a tough game on Sunday, while there were drops and it was tough, I think you still trust that group as they are, as opposed to, well, all right, what's going to happen in the pass rush group? They're not showing you anything, or at least wide receiver wise, Zay shows you something and Rashad shows you something. It'd be nice to have a third wide receiver, but as Kansas City has shown, you can also make both moves. They got DeAndre Hopkins and a pass rusher. Maybe the Ravens can do the same, offense and defense. So John Harbaugh here, kind of hint. I'm taking this kind of as like, okay, he's hinting at personnel, like just looking at it. So again, he's not saying they're going to make a move, not saying they're not, but I think they're exhausting all options. That's what John Harbaugh is saying here. But coming up in the second part of the show, we got some Marcus Williams drama, and John Harbaugh spoke on the situation. We'll talk about what he had to say and what might be going on. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens. First of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get $100 million the game, you can check out the latest stats for that play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back with our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you talking Ravens football on this Taco Tuesday. It was just such a disappointing way for the Ravens to lose this game. And you mentioned in that first part of the show where, young players take time to develop. And for a win now team, who's going to be that guy? Well, young players take time to develop, but so do young coordinators. And Zach Orr has been a talking point for a long time here over these first couple of months. And even back to when they hired him, right? We were on here, you and I, saying that there were going to be some growing pains. It's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows, He needs a little bit, more of a grace period because he's never called plays before. Well, we're now 2 months into the season. The secondary is an absolute disaster. Some of the play calling schemes that we've seen have not been great. Now, let's call it like it is, Q. Zach Orr is not out there dropping picks. All right. Zach Orr is not the one physically going out there and dropping the interceptions. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a combination of both the way the players are playing and the way that the coaches are coaching that has a big impact on the defense is performing right now. Before we get into the Marcus conversation, what is your overall outlook on this defense? Because I remember we talked about the concern levels. I think it was either last week or a couple of weeks ago, and your concern level was pretty high. Well, now after a game like that, I'm sure your meter might be breaking at this point.
So it's interesting, when we talk about the Zach Orr as a coordinator, it's not just the play calling, it's the timing of the play calling, but it's also like how do I get the most out of my coaches to articulate to the different position groups what's what? And then how do I strategically get my leadership, the Kyle Hamiltons, the Roquan Smiths, the Nnamdi Madubuikes at each level to raise up their play? Then how can, as a bigger picture thing, how can I Trenton Simpson, how do I get to him? What is it that, I can say that might spark something in Odafe Owe to be that fourth quarter closer? Those are things where experience comes in, because you miss me with the whole fandom thing, with, the calls. I'm like, yeah, it's the X's and O's, but that's them Jims and Joes. Like the Jims and Joes, they're the ones that take ownership of their defense, of their offense, of whatever. Like Todd Monken can call the greatest play, but if Daniel Faalele, and I'm not picking on Daniel, but if he, blows it and now, the stunt comes in, Lamar can't throw the ball. Or, Hightower last year blows by a not fully 100% Ronnie Stanley. And now, you got a guy coming across the middle. This is the perfect play call. Lamar's about to release the ball. Now, all of a sudden, it gets stripped out of his hand. That's not Lamar's fault. That's not Todd Monken's fault. it's the Jims and Joes, the execution of it all. And that's the Pittsburgh game for those who don't know. But anyway, we've been doing this such a long time. I'm like, oh, of course.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But the point I'm making is that's where I'm like, yeah, absolutely criticize, Zoe if he's not doing those things. If Mike McDonald did those things and just Jedi mind tricked guys into, coaching their guys up harder or, did, some level of CIA, black ops type understanding to get the most out of a guy, man, bruh, that's what made him the next head coach for the Seattle Seahawks, and now he's got to deal with his own drama. Robert Saleh, he got fired, but he was like the man up in the 49ers, and everybody's like, wow, he's the next head coach in waiting. It's such a fine line with helping your team and really getting them. And I think that's what is frustrating when I see the defense, because you're right. It just seems like there's something timing wise not there. But them Jims and Joes, man, with them drop interceptions, bro, I have nothing to do with nothing unless everybody. When I say everybody, our colleagues, the Jeff Rebecks of the world, the Jonas Schaefer's, and the Brian Wackers of the world, they're all saying, "Hey, we're out there observing practice. There's, we got guys out there on the jugs machine." And so, that means that they're working at it. But for crying out loud, mother of frickin' pearl, the secondary, bruh, you just don't get interceptions like that. Jaden Daniels should have had an interception, just boom. Jameis Winston should have had a few. Boom. Obviously, Baker Mayfield did, but he should have had even more. So, woo, we're not inside the building, so we can't really get at it. But this is from my football eye what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and look, I just think that, again, like you said, the timing of some of these plays is off. It's not all on Zach Orr, but, it's not all on the players either. It's a combination of both. And, it's been more of a process than people thought it was probably going to be. I thought it was going to be a process, but I thought it would be kind of further along at this point. We've seen some great concepts. That Kyle Hamilton stunt where, he times it up perfectly. I loved that play. That was awesome. But then you have, okay, is the defense playing too off in this situation? Are they sending too many guys in this situation? What's the thought process? So again, as a coordinator
what's the key? Because what you're saying is so spot on, Kevin. So it's not that they're playing off, but what information are you giving me? And am I trusting the detail of I see the key, I saw the route combination. This is what, the scouting said. This is what we talked about. Now I got to play ball. And I know in practice, I've been driving down hill and making that interception, or, I see the play because I studied extra. I saw, the route or my position coach gave me a little bit of a tell that when they do this formation and they are this, I need to trust that. We see it with the Kyle Hamiltons, but the Eddie Jacksons, we ain't seen it. Clearly Marcus Williams, we hadn't seen it. Our Darius, we hadn't seen it. Mother of pearl. That's what I'm saying. It's like them Jims and Joes gotta what are you giving the Jims and Joes, and then Jims and Joes, what are y'all doing to make that thing be a certainty and close out games? Because that's playoff, that's dominance. Later in the year, teams are going to start refining and getting better, but also later in the year, just because of the nature of the game, there's going to be some attrition. So if you can mentally lock in, you can steal some victories and just stack it up and just go into the playoffs like this, rather than limping in, and that's what you don't want to do if you're a secondary giving up tons and tons of points. Like, you got to finish. What tell are you seeing? What move do you know that you need to set up? Is it a bull rush? Ha, speed.
Yeah.
Is it a speed, then boom, stick your hand up in the inside of his armpit because he's off balance, and now you're going inside. Like, what are you doing from the nuance of it all to help your team in that fourth quarter? Because right now it's just, look, the statistics are the statistics, and they're saying y'all suck. 32nd in the league. That's sucky. I don't know what else to say. Like, we just play sucky, and we're trying to spell the word sucky. Who wants to spell the word sucky? I don't. Let's be that top 10 sustaining level of football that needs to be. Like, let's get some extra film study in together, not with the coaches, but with each other. Let's look at the nuances that help us be on the same page together, rather than letting guys just run down the field and you chasing them, or you trying to say it was a push off. Like, help each other, help yourself. Let's do it.
Yeah, you have to. And a very quick thing on what you said there, I want to give a quick example of it, is, again, when the Ravens were sending cover 0 late in that game and essentially trying to stop Cleveland from scoring on that last possession. Well, not the touchdown that they went ahead with. On that touchdown to Cedric Tillman, the Ravens sent pressure, and Eddie Jackson after the game said that that's a tough look for him. Cover 0 stuff when you're the guy single high. And in that situation, you have to know that if pressure is not getting there within the first 2 or 3 seconds and a guy's running a vert at you, you can't be standing flat-footed. And that's something, it's communication, and it's on the player himself to know that. And so when you're asking for a tell, asking for a signal, asking for a little nuance, it's those types of things. Because the Ravens run those types of plays to say, all right, we're going to stop you from scoring. We're going to let you score so our offense can get the ball back, because the defense wasn't getting any stops in that game. So it's like, all right, you send cover 0. If the pressure gets there, you knock him out of field goal range. If it doesn't get there, it's either a contested play or a touchdown. But for Eddie Jackson, he was just standing there and let Cedric Tillman run right by him. So it's those situations where you got to be more on top of it from a communication standpoint from the coaches, as well as the player understanding. That's where it seems like there is some level of disconnect. And speaking of disconnect, Marcus Williams, that whole situation is getting crazy. So we talked a lot about defense. We'll get to Marcus Williams in the final part of the show. I know, Q, you have some other thoughts as well. We're going to get into that too. So be sure to stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it going through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, and so much more. And hey, maybe you're into the music scene. The history of classical music is another thing that Hillsdale College has to offer there. So all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. And this show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to up to 100 times your cash. Earn their game all season long on PrizePicks. I love going on PrizePicks, seeing everything they have to offer over there. You can now do it 100 times money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discount select player projections up 25% and provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. With players going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds to turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. So for that Ravens and Browns game, if you had more on Zay Flowers receiving yards, that was a good thing to go after over on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking with you here. Be sure to like and subscribe here on Locked On Ravens video form and audio form. Same show, both audio and video. This Marcus Williams thing, Q, caught me off guard personally. I had said the Ravens were going to kind of rock with him, see what happens. Well, I could not have been more wrong about that situation. The Ravens have him as not even a healthy scratch. They didn't even scratch him. They had him active just not to play him in the game. So you had Eddie Jackson, Darius Washington out there. And John Harbaugh, after the game on Sunday, called it, it was a personnel thing, but also kind of an internal thing that they were going on with. So Harbaugh, that's a lot about it on Monday. And said a lot about how, he believes in Marcus and he's a heck of a player. You have all these compliments. But then another question, Harbaugh is asked to kind of clarify, well, you said it was personnel, but also it's internal. So, what's going on? And Harbaugh, is a bunch of, I don't really think I have anything else to say about it. There's a lot of things going on. It belongs in-house. It's between us, not something we need to tell everybody about. They're keeping it to themselves, essentially, was the messaging. So kind of a whole lot of nothing from John Harbaugh in the Marcus Williams situation, but this just doesn't seem like this is just a clear cut and dry situation. Feels a little more complicated than just I don't know if he said something to the coaches. I don't know if they benched him for his play, and who knows what's going on. But we know that Marcus wasn't playing well. We know that he was not giving them what they needed on the field. They went with something different for whatever the reason, be it on or off the field, and it didn't even work that way either. So I don't know what the end game here is for Marcus Williams. They can, if this really does go sour, and they can cut him next year for a couple of million in cap savings. But this thing just kind of escalated pretty quickly, and I didn't really expect it to get to this point.
Anytime you say we're going to keep things in-house, anytime you're, using all the different, language that John was using, that there was a lot of ticked off conversation, some elevated, raised conversation between player, coach. I'm sure players' agents probably talking to the general manager and all stirring around. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, if he's active, not deactive, but active, but ain't playing, then something happened. And so with that said, the bigger picture is, what do you do moving forward? Because, Marcus hasn't been playing as well. Yes, there could be miscommunication. No, Eddie Jackson is not the answer. And then who else is out there? But then you got to hope that they get caught up to speed. So you're in you're between a rock and a hard place because of, you gave him that big dollar contract and just business wise, he hasn't produced. You have a team that is poised and ready to play for an AFC championship opportunity and run to the Super Bowl. Clearly got it. Running game, passing game, somewhat pieces there, small pieces there on defense, but it's there. It all needs to be reconciled if you expect to move on. It has to be reconciled. And if it doesn't get reconciled, then my God, man, you're Kansas City or whomever else is going to be sitting there and you're going to be saying the same thing over again. Another missed opportunity in the Lamar Jackson era.
It's very rare that we use the word dysfunction with this Ravens team, and I'm not even calling it that right now because we don't know what this is, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions, obviously. But I'm going to tell a very brief story. Hugh, I'm a Denver Nuggets guy. I know we've had those conversations, and during their championship year, a couple of years ago, they had a player on their roster named Bones Highland. They picked him in the first round. He was a second-year guy, and Bones got unhappy with his role. He did a couple of things in the games, on the side, on the bench, and left the arena. And the Nuggets decided we can't have that when we're trying to win a championship. We can't have that energy. No distractions. So they traded him away for he was worth, in terms of actual draft capital, you can argue, what his value was. They traded him away for 2 second-round picks, which was very far below what they could have actually gotten for him. But they were so desperate to say, this could be the year. We don't need any distractions here. We're going to eliminate it all. You can't have distractions if you want to win a Super Bowl. Some teams can handle them to a different extent, but you want to eliminate all that. And like you said, Q, you cannot have that lingering, right? You don't want to have that lingering regardless of what it is. And we don't know that right now, but regardless of what it is, you don't want to have that lingering in the organization. So hopefully it all gets squashed. Hopefully it all gets better. And of course, hopefully if Marcus steps back on that field for the Ravens, and again, we don't know when or if that's going to happen at this point, but hopefully he's able to play a little bit better. And hopefully the Ravens are going to be able to play a little bit better, because week 8 Q was not a fun time for this Ravens team. And we had, a bunch of different people weighing in on this situation. Shannon Sharp was flabbergasted that the Ravens did not run the ball as much. They had Derrick Henry have 11 carries in this game. Said, quote, your defense is not very good in pass coverage. Why would you not run the football to limit their ability to get on the field? You have Kurt Benkert, who, was a quarterback, and he does a lot of different film breakdowns. One of the things that he said, he was doing a Jameis Winston study, and he said one of his big takeaways was, man, this Ravens defense is going to be what holds him back from going to the Super Bowl because of all the stuff that's going on. You have Bill Belichick saying that, like you kind of talked about, Q, with losing all these experienced coaches and having a young coordinator in there, that stuff matters. Losing experienced coaches, especially with them, with Mike McDonald, Anthony Weaver, Denard Wilson, that has an impact. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't even know what type of energy it is, but it's not great energy after that loss because of the way that they lost it. So in your eyes, Q, what's kind of your overall outlook on this team, especially based off of what you saw in week 8?
I saw a team that I'm glad they had to go through the adversity now. So I'm a glass half full guy. I believe in this team. I think that these things are correctable. I think that it's a whisper between being dominant and the season falling flat. I think it was good that it was Cleveland as opposed to a Cincinnati or a Pittsburgh. If you want to win, there has to be that, I'm not going to say players only meeting just because of players only meeting, and that, like guys are on one side of the fence or another. Oh, you don't need players only meeting. Oh, players only meeting are great. What I'm saying is accountability meeting, however that looks. From a coaching aspect of things, whatever happened with John or whomever, however, with Marcus Williams, that needs to be squashed real quick. And again, running the football is one thing, but looking at the way in which the Cleveland Browns was hitting that offensive line in the mouth, okay, I love how pundits, you should have run the football. Oh, yeah, because then what they're doing is they're looking at the stat and what they look like coming into the game. But again, that's the whole cliche of, the bottom line is we know you know us, because they play each other twice a year. So it's not like this is, any like, oh my gosh, they're the Ravens. We don't know them. How do you think the NFC is, failed to really stop Lamar? It's because of the fact they don't see him all the time. And he's such a unique player. And so it does lend an advantage. Well, Cleveland knows him. So, yeah, okay, great. And there's something to be said about that. And also, Justin Tucker, Collier, and Wallace, all of them, there's a contribution there when it comes to field position and when it comes to being the clutch kicker that the GOAT we know is Justin Tucker. Man, I mean, I'm not saying his best days are behind him. Maybe he can redeem himself, but statistics are statistics from a kicker's aspect of things. And that now is going to play a role in whether or not you're trying to punt the ball and get it inside the 10 or, Lamar going for it on fourth down because you don't have the full confidence to make it past the 48-yard kick.
Yeah. And, you talk about win as a team, lose as a team. They certainly lost as a team on Sunday. Offensive, defensive, special teams, all 3 units made mistakes. Lamar Jackson, Q, I don't think played a bad game. Wasn't his best game by far. Certainly missed on some throws and had some ones he'd certainly like to have back. But he tried to put the team on his back towards the end there and tried to will that team to a victory. But Q, you know a thing or two about catching the football. You did it for a little while.
Just
a little bit. This Ravens team right now, I don't think could catch a cold. Yeah, they lead the league in dropped interceptions. You see, Rashad Bateman loses the ball in the sun. He says it bounces off his face. You have Nelson dropping a ball. The drop picks, as I mentioned, are just a huge point here. Is this just like a jugs machine thing, or drops contagious? Like, is the whole team getting a case of the drops? Like, what do you attribute this to? Because, man, this is a season-long thing. This is a 2-month problem, and it's not looking like it's anywhere close to getting solved.
Well, as far as the receivers and all that, I'm hoping it was a Pittsburgh game from last year type of thing where, yeah, we saw it and then it just disappeared and you saw guys tracking, doing their thing. That's what I'm hoping for that. From a defensive aspect, like they're tracking the ball skill drills that you can do to help yourself catch the ball better. And really be dogged about catching the ball better as opposed to relaxing, thinking that you got it. I mean, there is a huge difference with that. Like, how do you catch the ball better in regards of tracking it in space? And we're seeing where it's not a short pass, but it's a deeper down the field throw, which, by the way, they're last in the league and giving up those deep ball type throws. Anyway, glass half full. It is correctable.
I hope it is, because it's just missed opportunity after missed opportunity for this team. And speaking of that, I mean, they got too cute on offense when they had opportunities. You do the Derrick Henry Wildcat, you put Charlie Kohler under center. I know that's your guy, but hit him under center. He false starts it up. I mean, it was tough. Again, you win as a team, you lose as a team. Baltimore lost as a team on Sunday. But Q, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on. I see that missile training in the back right there. Tell people where they can find you, what you're working on, and of course about missile training.
Yeah, man. missiletraining.com is where you can find me, at missiletraining.com, and interact. And if you are a parent, if you are a person looking for from 6 years old up to 85, looking from human movement and sports performance, if you're looking for team training, girls, boys, young men, women, doesn't matter the sport, doesn't matter the individual, I can help you. And at the same time, in all of that, missiletraining.com is where you can go to check me out. You can also check me out on WJZ on Sundays. And at 11, we are on our streaming service. And then at 11:30, we go up on the big boy stage on CBS. And you can check us out on there. Purple Pregame is where you'll find me. Of course, there is the awesomeness of this show here, Locked On Ravens, with my guy, Kevin Ostriker. I'm telling you, we break it all down. We don't color it up. We just say, hey, we're going to give it to you straight and let you know how it is that the Ravens are doing.
A real Ravens talk over here on Locked On Ravens. So again, be sure to check Q out at missiletraining.com, WJZ, and of course here on Locked On Ravens. Links to all that in the description down below. Q, appreciate you as always, and thank you to everybody for tuning in to Locked On Ravens today. Be sure on the way out, hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Follow along and subscribe in audio form as well. We'll be back here tomorrow with more Ravens coverage. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.